everyone and welcome to Hustle Season. In today's video, I'm going to talk about most of the books that I have recently read in the second half of 2021, aka since my last video. But anyways, here we go. I usually am very inconsistent with giving synopses, but there won't be any spoilers in this video. The first book that I read was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This book blew up, so you probably already know it. She literally just won the Goodreads like romance reader's choice. I don't know the official name of that award, but she won best romance. Actually, I'm probably going to talk about the other book too, but she only barely beat The Love Hypothesis, which I thought was like kind of cool. They both had like 88,000 votes. Anyways, you don't care. But this book is loosely based off of When Harry Met Sally, which I had heard of, but I'd never watched. But I did watch after reading this because I did like this book. And I think this is actually better than the movie. But anyways, it's about two friends and they go on a bunch of different vacations and you kind of just see like how they go from friends to lovers, kind of sort of ish. I just thought this book was so cool. Like, I thought the main character Poppy is a little bit annoying, but I think that despite the fact that the character is annoying, like the way the book is crafted is just so cool. It basically takes place over 12 years and you see the present timeline where they're going on a vacation together, but also you see all these flashbacks of like the vacations that they've taken together over the last 12 years as well. And it's just like incredible how the author somehow like manages to show you all of these like flashbacks while also like maintaining a story of their relationship. Like you can definitely see how each of the previous vacations are building on one another, if that makes sense. It was just so good. It's kind of like, you know, the first time you see Memento and you're just like, oh, I didn't even realize like a story could be like that. Like, it was just really fun to see this like new format, if you will. Also, I love the relationship, and I know that most people prefer haters to lovers, but I am obsessed with friends to lovers. I think it's just so much chiller. I also really like nice boys, and so if you're into nice boys and friends to lovers, like, you're gonna love this. I highly recommend. The next book that I read was Counting Down With You by Tashia Bhuiyan. I thought this book was really great. It was so cool to see a brown main girl. I believe she's Bangladeshi. I am not, so I don't know like how well it represents the culture, but I do think it's own voices, so there's that. In terms of like some of the stuff that the main character experiences, some of it was so similar to what some of my friends have gone through that it was just really cool to see, because there were just aspects that I don't think I've seen yet in YA literature. Obviously I know like with Mindy Kaling getting big, there's a lot of like brown girls on TV now, and there's like that whole Netflix show, and like, you know, like Asian cultures in general are getting a bit more representation, but it was just really cool to see it as like a book, you know? Actually, now that I think about it, I think the thing that bothered me is I actually felt like the main characters, like friends, not her family, but her friends and the love interest were just so understanding, and I was like, where do you find friends like that in high school? It's just so rare. Where do you find a love interest in high school who's like so perfect, you know what I mean? So sometimes reading it, I was like, this is a little bit like wish fulfillment fantasy-ish. But other than that, it was a lot of fun, and I guess if you suspend disbelief, it's still a really enjoyable read. Okay, cool. Oh, actually, no, that's a spoiler, I can't tell you. Oh, next I read volumes 4 and 5 of Astro, Lost in Space. This is like a 5-volume manga that I wanted to finish because I randomly started it and I did not like the first volume, but I was like, but it's so short, I might as well just finish it, and so then I can have a proper opinion. So I kind of like read through all of them this year, and it gets a little bit better by the end. Like, some things are explained and you're like, oh, I see what you did there, but other than that, I did not love the series, and I don't really recommend. Like, she's okay, but she's like a bit vanilla, you know? Like, yeah, I didn't love it. I thought the characters could have been better. The story could have been better. Anyways, that's all I have to say on that one. Next, I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is another book that's like really huge on Book Talk. My overall thoughts on the book was that, like, it wasn't bad. I just like didn't really love the style. Personally, I felt like the most interesting parts were kind of skimmed over, like, especially initially. Like, for me, I really liked the romance between, I can never say his name, is it Patroclus and Achilles, and I wanted to see way more of their relationship, but she kind of fast forwards and it's not really insta love, but like you just don't see all of the intimate moments that I think I would have rather had seen. Also, maybe like I just prefer more of a slower burn build. I would have personally preferred more history. Like everyone from what I'd heard had said like it's so rich in learning about the old Greek culture and like old traditions and all of that, and I just felt like I probably could have done with a lot more details. I would have been happier if she explored that even more, because apparently she's like a history or mythology prof or something like that. So I didn't like hate the book, but I didn't like it nearly as much as I wanted to. Also, like I love Greek mythology, so I thought, you know, it'd be a perfect fit, but alas, it was not, which is okay. Oh, then I reread A Court of Mist and Fury, which was still good. I won't really talk about that. I had a Sarah J moment. A Sarah J Maas moment, and then I read A Court of Silver Flames, which, you know, it was like entertaining. I don't like Nesta. This book didn't change that for me. If anything, I almost wish we had just kept her as like a one-dimensional, kind of cold-hearted bitch who like uses people for sex character. I don't know. Like I didn't really care. Like I like Cassian. I don't love Nesta, and no offense, but like I'm a huge fan of Rhysand and Feyre, and they're not really in that book that much, and I get that these aren't really objective reasons to hate the book, but I just didn't like the book. And then I tried to read then I read Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. This was my first Penelope Douglas book, and I was really excited because I've obviously heard good things, and it was okay. I didn't like love it in the end. It was okay. I think, to be fair, I'm not super into like the romance type books. There's like it's a little bit of a toxic romance. If that is your thing, it was well written. I think I listened to the audiobook like while I was driving, and it was enjoyable and entertaining. There are like some really steamy smut scenes, but I don't know, I just generally like I didn't love the book, you know? I don't think I liked either of the characters as much as I wanted to. But anyways, moving on, I then read Made in Korea by Sarah Sook. This was another one that I was really excited to want to like. That doesn't make sense. I wasn't excited to read it, but I was hoping that I would like the book. And it was okay. It wasn't bad, like it was enjoyable, but it wasn't like great, especially because at this point I've read so many, not that I'm lumping them all together, but I kind of am. But I read a lot of like Korean American type books / authors, and of all the ones that I read, like this one was okay, but she wasn't very high up there. The story was kind of meh. The characters were kind of meh. Like it was one of those books where I think if it was like a Disney Channel movie or whatever channel is big right now movie, then I probably would have liked it more. But as a book, it was kind of like, I don't know. Like it could be better. It wasn't bad. I think the fact that I later read another Korean American type book that was just so much better made me like this one a little bit less. Also, just like the idea of two people competing to like promote consumerism. Like I love the Korean culture and I love Korean skincare, but like, I don't know, they were competing to sell products to like high schoolers, and like these high schoolers were spending money every week on skincare products, and like, I know I'm definitely reading way too much into this book and the message, but like, you don't need to be buying skincare products every week, you know? You just don't. So I can't fully support this book. And then I read The Stone Sky, which is the third book by N.K. Jemisin in the Broken Earth trilogy. Honestly, I don't have a lot to say about this series. I was reading it for a buddy read, so I just kind of forced myself to read it. It is really good. N.K. Jemisin is really amazing. I think the first book in that series, what is she called? The fifth season. The fifth season by far is my favorite, although the other two books are really good. I think the biggest problem with the entire series is that it is just, you can just tell it's written by a really intelligent person, and it just takes so much mental energy for you to like keep track of what's going on. And yeah, I don't read a lot of like high fantasy, and this is definitely like high functioning fantasy. Like you really have to, you know, like dial in and try to like absorb every sentence, and it wasn't for me in that I don't like to work that hard when I'm reading a book, but otherwise it was incredibly done, and I have no complaints or like flaws that I see with it. It was really good. It's amazing. If you like that type of stuff, then read it. She's won a ton of awards for it, so it's obviously like good. So then I read XOXO by Axio. So this book centers around also like Korean Americans, well, a Korean guy and a Korean American girl. Anyway, the girl, she works at a noraebang, and which is like a karaoke place, and she happens to meet this like K-pop star, but she doesn't know he's a K-pop star because, I don't know, I guess she doesn't follow the current stuff. And then somehow, for some reason, I don't really remember, she like moves to this art school in Korea. She plays the cello, I believe. And anyways, they start going to school together, and they have this like weird connection, like, you know, they shared a moment in America, and then like, will they, won't they become girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. It's total like wish fulfillment of like a girl who is into K-pop, and then eventually like starts to fall for a K-pop star, and like, you know, that whole, I don't know if that's a trope, but like falling in love with a celebrity, definitely could just be like straight up fan fiction. Like if you swap this guy out for like any of the BTS members or whoever it is you like, you know, ATs, whatever, you tell me, you could swap them in here and it would just be straight up fan fiction. And that's what I kind of liked about this book. Like it was just so, like the author knew what she was doing and what she intended, and then she delivered just that. And by far, of all the books that I've read that have some element of K-pop in it, can I say like K-pop diaspora? All the books in the K-pop diaspora that I have read, which there are not many that I have read. I've read I'll Be the One, I believe, and I've read The Maureen Goomba, Somewhere Only We Know. I believe she's a K-pop star, even though it takes place in Hong Kong. Those are really the only two that I've read. And by far, this, out of all of them, makes the most references to like legit K-pop things, to like Korean films and to K-dramas. And you can just tell that the author herself is like a K-pop fan. You know what I mean? Like she just gets it in a way that the other ones, in my opinion, maybe they got it, but they didn't really portray it in their books. By far, this is my favorite K-pop type book. If you have any better ones, like let me know. So then I read The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, maybe, probably. This book is by a Persian author. It is about Persians, and if you don't know, I am Persian. And so I was really excited to read this one, and honestly, as I was reading it, it was just a whole like emotional journey. The book itself is very like flowery, a little bit like historical romance, and like kind of this like epic love story sweeping several, not generations, but like many years. Actually, yes, several generations. It is not my type of book necessarily, but I think because I had such a personal connection to this one, I ended up like absolutely loving it. Like this book taught me just so much about like Iran during the time that my grandma and my mom and my dad were growing up, and I asked them so many questions about things that were referenced, and it sparked all these conversations. I learned a lot about my own family. It was just so interesting to see like life from their perspective. And then afterwards, like there's parts of the book where some of the main characters are living abroad in America, and just seeing like their transition. It's just like reading about all these experiences that my parents probably had when they moved to Canada, but that like, you know, you don't always know. It was just so cool to like think of them and when they were younger, when they moved, and you know. Anyways, I just really liked it. It made me like really appreciate what they've done for me and everything they've been through. And then also like it got me talking to them, and so like I said, I've learned so much since reading this book and talking to them. I actually made my mom read this book, and she like loved it. You know, like she kept messaging me because she cried so much because some of it was so relatable. And I was like, this is just, it's so cool, you know? Like books can bring people together, and it can teach you things. And certainly like I haven't read that many books about Persians. I have a very small section up there about like Persian Americans mostly, but it's usually like the, what's it called? Like the first generation, as opposed to like, this one was straight up like Persians in Iran and like what they experienced before coming. So it was just cool. It was new. I highly recommend this one. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, okay. Then I read The Love Hypothesis, and that was the book that, actually I don't know if I said this, but for the Goodreads like romance awards or whatever, like the best romance book award, The Love Hypothesis came in second. The Love Hypothesis, if you haven't, I don't have my copy with me, but if you haven't heard, it's like one of the biggest books, I would think. Like, I've seen it absolutely everywhere on social media. I don't know outside of that in real life how well it's done, but I think it's like done really well for itself. It's based on a fan fiction of Kylo Ren and Rey from those the new Star Wars films. Again, this book I liked so much that I also went and watched a movie because of it. I watched the first of the new trilogy of Star Wars. Honestly, I don't know if you can tell or not, but like, I love this book so much. It was so good. I don't even really have words for it. I think the only criticism that I have seen, I can link the video down below, but it's by a YouTuber named Alexandra, I believe. And basically they said that the like representation of BIPOC in like STEM and academia was like a little bit not so great. Like, they kind of talk about it, but it's not really explored. So I'll let you watch that video if you want. But other than that, like, I've loved it. I'm not in STEM, but I am in academia, and so I related to a lot of what they were saying, and just in general, like, women in science type thing, I like really related to. If you are wondering if it's like too much hype or not, I would just say that at the end of the day, the book is very much like your typical heterosexual romance. So if you're not huge into like the romance genre, I don't know that this will necessarily like change that for you. But if you're into romance, I just don't see how you wouldn't like this. Because all the things that I didn't like about it were really just that sometimes it was so cheesy, and sometimes it was like so over the top or so cliche. But the thing is, if you like romance, you like all those things and you don't care about that. But if you don't like romance and you read this, you'll be like, oh my god, like, I don't get it, you know? I didn't even really know who Adam Driver was, nor was I like a huge fan. But I am now. Like, I like this book so much that I would now consider myself intimately aware of Adam Driver. So anyways, I love that book. Oh, and actually, yeah, no, that's it. That's all I want to say about that one. Then I read Daring Greatly by Brene Brown because my friend made me watch the Netflix special. And I would just say watch the 40-minute Netflix special, but I read the book. Then I read Baby and Solo by Lisbeth Posthuma. This book was kind of cool because it is a book that I, by myself, picked out from Indigo with like no knowledge of what it was. I just saw that it had a yellow VHS on it, and I was like, this really speaks to me right now. So I bought it and I read it, and I was very pleasantly surprised with how much I ended up liking it. It is about this young guy. His therapist basically tells him, you gotta start working somewhere, like go get a job, and he decides to work at the equivalent of like a Blockbuster, which, if you are too young to know, is a place where you could rent VHS or movies. I think actually they did make it to DVDs before they closed. But anyways, so yeah, so he works at this like video rental shop, and everybody there has to like, their name tag essentially isn't their name, it has to be like your favorite character, hence Baby from Dirty Dancing and Solo, like Han Solo from Star Wars. So another book that references Star Wars. This book also, in part, was what motivated me to watch that new Star Wars film, and in general to like try to watch the other two, because he is a huge fan of Star Wars. It comes up a ton in the books, and books really influence what I do in my day-to-day life. So yeah. Actually, the other thing that this influenced me to do is that they talk a lot about this REM song called What's the Frequency, Kenneth? So I have listened to that several times since, and while I don't like the song, I kind of like the song because I'm like, oh, it's the song from the book, you know? And then also they talk so much about like 90s films that I ended up watching a few of them. So I have a friend who like loves videos. I have a friend who loves movies, Andrew, hi. And so they talk about Reality Bites, and so I messaged him and I was like, is Reality Bites good? And he was like, yeah, it's great. Ethan Hawke is gorgeous. And so I was like, oh, okay. So like we watched it, and then, yeah, is it Ethan Hawke? Is Ethan Hawke the actor or Mission Impossible? Sorry, now I care. Oh yeah, no, it's Ethan Hawke, okay. It was also really cool because if you are into books with platonic relationships and no love line in the end, then this is one of those. So like, you know, you Radio Silence fans, maybe consider. Then I read Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This was a book that I actually really wanted to like. It's supposed to be like Mia Thermopolis, but Japanese, and it just didn't deliver. It was honestly very boring, but it was so easy to read that I tried to finish it. I didn't really care about anything in this book. I don't even remember much of it because I just didn't like it. So I don't really recommend. I would say I've never read The Princess Diaries, but like go watch the films. They're much better. Then I read The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. In the end, I'll be honest, I didn't like it as much as I wanted to, but it was very enjoyable in terms of reading it. And I think that it made me think a lot. It had some really cool concepts. It was really well written. Like I really enjoyed reading it, and I liked the setup, I liked the characters. I think I just personally didn't love the ending, and so it like kept me from really loving the book. But I thought that the atmosphere and the tone of this book were just so incredibly well done. And I think that as a whole, this concept of the other black girl and this concept of like black women competing in work environments where it feels like there can only be one black woman was just so interesting as like a thing. I personally thought it was just so interesting to see, you know, like all the discussions and discourses around like code switching and like what is considered appropriate or not appropriate hairstyles, and like to what degree do you kind of make yourself assimilate with the white crowd in order to like move up in a like company or corporate environment. And there were just so many things that I thought are like important to talk about and just really interesting to like stop and think about. I can't really talk about why I don't like the ending without spoiling it all. But yeah, I ended up really enjoying my read despite the fact that I didn't love the ending. And then I read volume 4 of Spy X Family. I have 5 and 6. I'm hoping to get to them. I have talked about this a lot, but it is like my favorite manga. It is so cute. It is adorable. You should read it. It is about an assassin and a spy and a telepath, and it is just, it's so good. It's like the best comedy slash cute slash like wholesome. Yeah, I was gonna say wholehearted, wholesome type story. So yeah, look into it if you like manga. And then, oh, I missed some. I read From Lucav with Love by Mariana Zapata. This was also my first Mariana Zapata book. I love skating, so I thought that I would love this. And sorry, my thing's annoying me. I feel like the theme of this video has been me saying I don't like things as much as I want to. This was a little bit of that. I think there was so much focus on the romance and like less on the skating. Although the skating was there, it was honestly, it was going so slow at the beginning that I was kind of like, when are we going to get to see their whole skating career or all these like skating competitions? And they focused a lot on like them practicing and them getting to know each other in practices, but I honestly wanted so much more from the actual like training montages to seeing how they perform at the end and like just seeing how their year progresses, which is weird because the book's already 600 pages long, so like why would I want more? But I just felt like we did not get enough about the actual like training stuff, and maybe people find that boring and they only care about the romance, but I love a good like, you know, people don't think we can do it, but we're underdogs. I guess that's the definition of underdogs, like in a sports setting. So I just wanted a lot more of that. I also felt like there were like problem after problem in this book. Like there was just no time to breathe, you know? Like, how do I say this? There was just so many tropes, you know? Like it'd be like someone gets an injury, oh, and then somebody is sick, and then somebody's like dying somewhere, and then someone gets arrested, and then this and that. I'm making up the tropes here, but like it was just nonstop, you know? It kind of felt like maybe one of those like Chinese, Taiwanese like fluff dramas. Like that's kind of what it felt like. It was just, or like Boys Over Flowers, like, you know, the old school K-dramas, like it felt like that. Like there was just no time for you to breathe because the main characters were just constantly in trouble in these like high stakes situations, to the point where it didn't really feel high stakes, you know, because like that's all that was happening. It wasn't a bad book, it was enjoyable, and I see why people like the slow burn aspect, but I still needed more. I just needed more actual like story. And I will say it was really cool to read about athletes because I think they are some of the like highest achieving type people. And like I work in medicine where there's a lot of high achievers, and like these people out achieve everybody in medicine, and I loved it. So my battery died, so I will just pick up where I left off. But essentially I was gonna say that it was really cool and relatable, I guess, to see people who are like more high achieving than the type of people that I work with. I guess I was feeling a little burnt out in medicine, and so it was nice to see someone else in that same miserable position, but like also happy with their choices, and just like a reminder that like, you know, you chose this for yourself, and like you should still be grateful and whatnot. And I'm getting way too deep for YouTube, but yeah, it was just, I guess I wasn't expecting to like that aspect of the book as much as I did, but it was just cool to see other super high achieving people, in fact more high achieving people, and just see that, you know, life could be worse. Like I could be a professional athlete and make all those sacrifices and have no guarantee of a proper income or of achieving anything that I wanted to. So yeah, I probably sound ruder than I'm intending, but I actually liked it, and anyways, it was nice to see. Moving on. The next book that I read is called Life for Sale by Yukio Mishima. My friend told me to read this because she said it's really fucked up and that I might like it. And so I tried reading it, and it was indeed quite strange, but it's like a really interesting concept. Basically there's this guy, he attempts suicide and then he can't complete it, or he doesn't complete it, but he basically says, well, I mean, I tried to kill myself, I don't feel like my life is worth living, so I'm going to put my life for sale, and people can pay me to do tasks that would otherwise be like dangerous, because I don't mind if I lose my life. And so he ends up getting like involved with all these strange personalities, because like who is looking to hire somebody's life, you know? And it gets like really absurdist even, and I'm sure that there is like a higher metaphorical meaning behind all of this, but I didn't think that hard about the book. But it was just really interesting and enjoyable to read, and it's so short that if you're into like weird fiction, I think you'll like it. Also interestingly, the author, like he did commit suicide, and was like clinically depressed and whatnot. I'm not 100% sure like if he wrote the books as some kind of like auto reflection, or if it was more of like a, I think about suicide a lot, so I'm just gonna write about what I think about. I don't know, but it's interesting. I haven't done my research, but it'd be cool to see like, or to learn more about his life and how that's reflected in his other works, because I think several of his books have something to do with suicide, or around the topic of suicide. The next book that I read was Atlas 6, which is also another book that's super big on Book Talk, and is actually a self-published book, so that is like so respectable in my opinion. Anyways, this is a book that is highly beloved on Book Talk. And then the way that I kind of heard about it is that people have reviewed it on BookTube, and mostly from what I've heard thought that it was overhyped. So interestingly, I was gonna just read this because I was like, it must be entertaining at the very least, even if it ends up being bad, if so many people like it. And so I was just, yeah, gonna give it a go. And ultimately, I did not hate it as much as like everyone made it sound like I might. Like, I guess I thought I was gonna think it's also overhyped because, as you've heard, I find most books don't live up to my expectation. But honestly, I really liked it. I didn't think it was that bad. I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved all of the sexual tension between all of the characters. Like, literally all of them kind of like each other in some shape or form, and I was really here for it. I liked the magic system. I liked how like physical it was. I have never studied physics, so I can't tell you if what she was saying made any sense or if it was all convoluted garbage, but I really liked it. I couldn't even always follow it, but it was cool to think about based off of my limited understanding of Einstein's theories. It was fun. I think the only kind of criticism that I had was I didn't love the pacing. I felt like it drags a bit in the middle, and given how cool their powers and talents are, I would have definitely wanted to see way more action and like way more of them doing cool things. There were parts of it where I was like, this needed to be tidied up and you needed an editor, but now that Tor has picked it up, you know, maybe the repackaged edition will be much better. Like, for example, I think the whole first section, I was already like a little bit put off because she does that thing where it's like, you essentially see the exact same scene from 6 different people's point of views, and I was like, you really didn't need to do that. Like, I understood the first time. I don't know what this served. Like, I didn't need to see the exact same scene essentially between all 6 of your characters. I thought that was like a little excessive. And I think the weirdest part for me was like sometimes I couldn't even tell that we had like changed location or changed characters, or like we weren't part of the same scene. Like sometimes those transitions were so abrupt that I was like, you know, I want to insert Whiplash by NCT there. But yeah, it was just, it was weird. Otherwise, I liked it though. And I'm really excited to see where the story continues to go. And if they ever want to make it into a TV show, I think it'd be great, etc., etc. And also, in general, this is a complete tangent, so feel free to fast forward, but feel free to fast forward. But essentially, it got me thinking a bit about, like, is book taste really that different between TikTok and YouTube? And if so, why? Is it just because of like the demographics of who uses each platform, or is it because like some people have kind of said that there's younger readers in general on TikTok, and therefore they're like newer to reading, and so they're talking about books that are what you usually read when you first start reading, whereas like YouTubers are a bit more seasoned, and therefore they've kind of moved beyond the initial people who are like hyped around when it comes to books, and they've kind of like looked for smaller, maybe more diverse reads and things like that. And I don't know, I find it interesting. I'm not on Book Talk, although maybe I'll get on it so I can do my own research. But I think it's interesting to see like which books are big on which, and certainly from like what I've seen, it seems like a lot of really random old books are big on Book Talk, and a lot of books that like we're not that big on BookTube, like we're kind of there, but we're like, oh, that's kind of meh, got really big on Book Talk. So it's just like interesting to see. Anyways, I'll end my tangent. The next book that I read was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. This was another book that I read for my book club. That's a lie. This was another book that I read as a buddy read. I don't have a book club. Yeah, it was interesting. It was my first Sally Rooney. I was really excited to read it. I don't know what she's known for, so I don't know how this lives up to what the expectation is when people go to read her books. But I thought it was really interesting. I thought it's a very heavily cerebral book, and that like permeates everything. Like I have never read smut scenes that are so cerebral. Instead of like the characters being in their bodies, they're just like in their heads the whole time, which was really interesting. And the book does this thing where the female characters like send emails back and forth to each other. The emails are basically like this mini essay format thing where they just like talk about society and like whatever other cultured things they want to talk about, and no one in real life talks like them. But if you don't get annoyed by like super smart people saying random existential shit, then you'll like the book. It was like interesting to read. I mean, again, it didn't feel relatable because I don't know anybody who talks like that, but it's what I imagine philosophy students or like English majors would talk to each other like. But again, I don't know because I studied science, but that's what I imagine. In the end, I don't know that I loved like the storyline. Like it almost felt a bit slice of life as opposed to like a proper story arc. Like it just felt like, here's a snapshot of modern romance. Enjoy. And I don't know if I liked it or not yet. I literally just finished it and I'm still trying to digest, but it was enjoyable. The last book that I read is Last Tank Standing by Lauren Ho. I read this because Allie Hazelwood, who's the author of The Love Hypothesis, recommended this on her Instagram story. So I got the audiobook. I've been listening to it while on my EEG rotation, and yeah, I mean, I hate to end this video on a kind of sour note, but I wanted to like this book way more than I did too. I think I was most excited by the fact that the heroine is 33 and the book is supposed to be about societal pressure to get married because she's like old. And I was like, you know, I just turned 30 this year. I feel old. I want to read about this. And I mean, I related, but I don't know that I like loved it. It's kind of pitched as like a Crazy Rich Asians meets Bridget Jones' Diary. And yeah, I mean, I don't really care for like rich people stuff. I don't find that super interesting. And then the Bridget Jones' Diary part, I think, is because of like the tone of humor, or the sense of, or the type of humor, I guess. It's very like petty, mean girl humor. But I think Bridget Jones' like Diary does that well. Like here, I almost felt like the main character's desperation was like so real that I didn't feel like she was really joking half the time. I was like, no girl, like that's just you being petty, like you really feel these things. Like I don't know that it's being funny, it's just being mean. It didn't really work for me, and I didn't love it. I think the coolest part about this book was that there's no clear love interest. She has several, and she's just like, you don't know who she's going to end up with. She's exploring different people. I thought that was probably like the closest to what modern dating is like, so I thought that part was cool. I wanted to like it a lot more, and in the end it was kind of like meh. That is the end of the books that I have read for the second half of 2021. I hope you enjoyed my ramble/rants on all of them, and yeah, if you've read anything cool and want to let me know, leave it down below and I will say hi. Okay, cool. Bye!